One's life begins to change when their desires transform into concrete actions. You're listening to the Desire to Be podcast, where your desires for your life and relationships become your mastery. I'm your host, Devora Goldberg, and thank you for joining. Welcome back to another wonderful episode of the Desire to Be podcast. Today's topic is a real fundamental one because we have the holiday of Pesach coming up, and it's possible that some people who are hearing this episode are knee-deep in their cleaning or about to start their cooking. And while you do that, I wanted you to hear from an incredible woman. Mrs. Gila Ross is the Director of Women and Families for the Jewish Experience in Denver, Colorado. She has impacted lives in Germany, Canada, the UK, and is an acclaimed educator and coach to help transform relationships and lives. And guys, she's about to transform yours. So even if you're not in any of those countries, you might just add to that list. A little bit more about Gila. Her vibrant, positive, and relatable style really make her well sought out after. She has a passion for sharing the joy and relevance of Judaism and for positive parenting. Her Power Up podcast was named the top Jewish podcast worldwide, and she also just launched the Confident Parent podcast. Gila is the author of Living Beautifully, an awesome book, which I'm in the middle of, and I recommend it wholeheartedly, everyone. And this beautiful book navigates the complex terrains of life, providing the tools and principles to appreciate what is truly valuable, seeing obstacles as challenges, and guiding her readers towards a balanced life full of meaning, joy, and fulfillment. Drawing from the time-tested wisdom of Pirkei Avos, Gila Ross shows her readers how to live beautifully despite the pressures and complexities of living a modern life. You can also download her free guide to Shabbat prep in an hour, which I've never tried to accomplish that. So that's pretty awesome. Filled with her tips and recipes. You can download that at gilaross.com/Shabbat. All right, Gila, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm so pleased to be here with you, Devora. Thank you. And I'm so happy to hear that you're enjoying the book, Living Beautifully. It always warms my heart when someone says that. So thank you.
Yes, absolutely. We're going to talk about that in a little bit and let people know what exactly they can appreciate from it and how they could apply to their lives. Gila, as a teacher, a coach, a community leader, tell my audience a little bit about the aspect of your job that you're most passionate about.
So that's a really great question. And I think the part that I'm most passionate about, and someone actually said this to me last week, was the education. Because like when I'm teaching, and the biggest compliment someone can say to me is like, wow, that really made me think. Because education is so important. When we can think about things, when we can understand things, right? That's how things start to change, right? When we sort of open our eyes and we see whether it's Judaism from a new perspective or a situation that we're in from a new perspective, and we kind of can think about it, that's so powerful. That is so powerful. I often say when I'm coaching people is that we think the sounds of intuition is wow. It's actually, huh? Right? That voice that kind of makes us stop and actually think and reflect back on things.
It's not just this moment of inspiration, but you're actually carrying it forward to other ideas or what your mind is going to comprehend a little bit later down the road. But at least you have some fundamentals to fall back on.
Right. And you're bringing it back to your own life, right? You know, it's not just a concept that's out there. It's something that like, oh, how does this fit in? Does this fit into my life? How does it fit into my life? What would it mean if I tried this on for a bit?
Yeah, I love that. Gila, you were on my podcast before and you dropped so many quality parenting pointers, which is why I wanted to have you back on, specifically right
Thank you.
now, right before Pesach. Tell us of the struggle of the balance that parents, especially moms, may be experiencing during this time.
I think one of the big struggles, and I don't know how many people talk about it, but let's talk about it, is a lot of us have our own memories of Pesach that we're coming into Pesach,
Mhm,
right? And for some of us, it's positive, and for some of us, it's not.
mhm.
And before we even start with the practicalities, that's a huge thing, right?
Right.
The memories that we have, the things that it triggers within us about Pesach. Then there's also our expectations about Pesach, right? Pesach is a fundamental part of the Jewish calendar, and it is a fundamental part of the calendar.
Mhm.
And when we're doing Pesach, not just for ourselves, but for others, we often have very, very big expectations of what Pesach is going to be like. So when you pile that, the triggers that it brings up for us, the expectations that we often put on ourselves or we feel is being put on us by our education, our upbringing, our society that we live in, and the physical part of it, right? Because it's very, very physically involving, right? Very, very physically demanding.
Mhm.
It's a lot, right? And all of this is taking place for a lot of people in the middle of regular life, right? It's not like we're told, okay, here's a month off. You have a month off from work. You have a month off from parenting. You have a month off from your health issues, that other things, and you can get ready for Pesach, right? A month, a couple of weeks before, the week of Pesach, a week afterwards to get back into it. No, it's all taking place during life.
It's all a juggle. And I love how you put that it's the memories of the past, it's the expectations of what your Pesach holiday will be this year. Maybe you tried
Yeah.
it last year and it didn't work out, but you really want it to be beautiful. So you have that expectation year after year. And then you have the physical aspect. So where's the navigation through all this?
So I think each part needs navigating. I think being aware of what it brings up for us is a huge part to start with, right? If Pesach wasn't or isn't, and for some people, they're spending Pesach with family and it's stressful. It's not that they're going home and it's like, oh, it's fantastic. It's navigating stressful relationships. So being number one, aware that all this is going on
Hmm.
is you, right? And then once you kind of have that awareness, it's very helpful to kind of sort of figure out where do I want to go from here, right? If Pesach is not a time that brings up positive, those warm, fuzzy memories, if Pesach is a memory of like those stressful times when
Hmm.
parents are stressed out or, it's super strict, and then know that that's what you're dealing with. And what do you want to create now? What's the vision that you want to create for yourself? If you're doing it for your family as well, for your family going forward for Pesach. Then we come into the expectations, right? Because we're very likely at that point to kind of say, and it's all this is very normal stuff, right? It's to say, okay, you know what? Pesach was super stressful growing up. That's not how it's going to be in my house, right? Or Pesach, was Seder night was so boring in my house. Went on for ages and ages. We were all starving, right? That's not
Hmm.
how it's going to be in my house, right? And which is great. But once you have your expectations, bring them down a bit, and then bring them down a bit, and then bring them down a bit. What do I mean by that is not that you shouldn't have an ideal, right? But make them realistic, right? For example, if you have small children for Seder night, right? To expect them not to complain, not to fuss, it's not a realistic
Not to
expectation,
cry, not to spill the wine, not to stain
right?
everything along the way. Hmm.
Exactly, right? Exactly. If you have picky eaters in your family, to expect them not to complain about Pesach and the different food is not a realistic expectation. Yeah, they're going to complain, but it doesn't mean that you have failed
Yeah.
in your goal of making it a beautiful Pesach. You can have complaining, right? And especially I think when we allow the space in a healthy way for, yes, it is an adjustment, the different foods and the different schedules and all that sort of things, right? Then you could still have those beautiful memories.
You're making me think of every other aspect of life that we're in, which is why this is so potent because anything that we try to accomplish, either if it's just dinner on a regular weeknight or getting the kids to sleep or getting them out of the house for school, we have expectations of what it should be like. But if we expect at the same time that things will not go okay, and you're still fine. As you're speaking, I'm like, if we can just apply this to every part of our lives, we'll just be happier. People will be more okay with ourselves. And when the setbacks
Right.
happen,
Yeah. Yeah.
do you know someone who's stressed? Or rather, do you know someone who's not stressed? Stress is a normal part of life. The only part which is not normal is when we hold onto stressful emotions like resentment, worry, anger, or frustration within. In my 15-minute guided meditations, I guide my clients to identify a stress that they're holding onto within their bodies and release it, leaving them with calm, inner peace, and ease. As a listener of the Desire to Be podcast, my gift to you is a free 15-minute guided meditation while spots are still available. DM me on Instagram at its.devoragoldberg or on Facebook at Devora Goldberg to claim your free session now.
I think a lot of it comes to understanding what our job is. Like, for example, you bring up mums. We often think our job is to make sure our kids eat a healthy dinner. That's not. Our job is to offer the food. And if the kids do it or not do it, right? Our job is to do our part. And the kids are going to react in whatever way. And then our job is to support them in having a healthy response to it or whatever it is. Do they sometimes get disappointed about dinner? Yes, lots of times, which is fine. You're allowed to get disappointed about dinner. We sometimes get disappointed about dinner. Imagine you go to your favorite restaurant and they don't have your favorite dish on the menu that night. Hopefully, as we raise our kids, we give them the tools to be resilient and to express that frustration in a healthy manner.
Yeah.
And
Right.
and then there's the practical aspect, right? The practical aspect of it, which is, again, figure out what's stressful for you in the practical aspect. For some people, it's the cleaning. Outsource as much as you can. Our job is to make sure the work is done. It's not that we have to do it all ourselves, right? If the cooking is stressful, how can you scale that back? How can you make it more manageable so that it's easier for you? And then once you've kind of figured out how can I make it as manageable for myself as possible, what can I delegate if that's an option, right? Then it's very helpful to set up a calendar and working backwards from Pesach, figure out when is it that I want to start cooking? When is it that I want to get my kitchen ready? When is it that I want to, start cleaning? And again, like there's no rules for how it has to be done. It's about figuring out how it works for you, right? For some people, they love to start early in advance and it stresses other people's out. Like for me, myself, I like to start last minute. Why? Because I have a bunch of little kids in the house and the kids are still eating the chametz, they're still eating the bread and the Cheerios and the cookies and the crackers. It's so stressful. So I'd rather kind of like wait as last minute, do it all fast, and then just switch over. And that works for me right now in this period of my life.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's about really like shutting off those voices from the outside. It doesn't matter what your neighbor's doing, it doesn't matter what your mom's doing, it doesn't matter what your sister's doing, it doesn't matter what other people are doing. What works for you for this scene?
Yeah. And it doesn't make a difference if someone else's table is set for the Seder 2 days before,
No, it doesn't.
right?
It really doesn't. Yeah.
And I'm thinking that Pesach must be an exciting time for you because right afterwards we start learning Pirkei Avos every Shabbos, which is a great time, guys, for you to go out and buy Gila's book called Living Beautifully. By the way, you can get it on mosaicpress.com or Amazon, anywhere else it's sold on.
You could also you can also get it off my website, gilaross.com.
Perfect.
And I'm very happy to offer your listeners a voucher, a coupon off it.
So we'll drop that in the show notes. I'm excited. There you go, guys. Tell my audience, Gila, what prompted you to write your book?
I never actually set out to write a book on Pirkei Avot. It started during COVID as a series on my podcast when we were all home and people were desperately searching for connection, spirituality, meaning. And so many of us were like time stretched because if they had kids, they were with kids, the kids were home, they were homeschooling, they were working, etc. It was just a crazy time for everyone. So I started a project where I committed to over 6 months going through Pirkei Avot, which is the part of the oral Torah that focuses on values and ethics and how to really live a good life. And I committed to bring out 2 episodes a week, up to 15 minutes a week. This way, it was something accessible to people. They could listen to it anytime they wanted. It was short and it was something relevant. Part of the project, right? Sticking through that, it actually took me 9 months to finish it on the podcast. And what happened was a little bit, it was crazy because I started for a very small, specific audience. And it got much, much bigger than that. And people from all sorts of walks of life and all sorts of different situations would message me and say, wow, that episode really spoke to me.
Mm.
And it was just incredible how relevant this this wisdom is. So once I kind of finished the project, I was like, okay, so now what? And I kind of like said as a floating idea, like, it's such great content. I'd love to turn it into a book.
Mm. So a moment of
And then
inspiration.
a moment of inspiration. And then I reached out to Mosaica and they really, really encouraged me along the way to write the book, to put it in. And they did a fantastic job of really taking that manuscript and making it into a book that's something that I'm really proud of, because the editing, the cover design, just so many things along the way. So yeah, that's how it is here, this book.
You speak in your book about incorporating joy and love of Hashem in our daily lives. And as Pesach is coming up, love, joy, excitement is probably like the furthest from people's minds. What's one way to be mindful of incorporating joy during this time?
That's a great question. I want to say that joy doesn't always mean that if you hate cleaning and you're knee deep in cleaning, it doesn't mean like this is so fun, this is so fantastic, right? People who sometimes work out, right? Not everyone loves the workout,
Right.
but they do it because it's meaningful, right? It's worth it for them. And that also brings joy. At the same time, I would also say it's very important that during that Pesach period
Hmm.
where it's so much extra stress is do something joyful for yourself every day. It doesn't have to be a big thing, whether it's sitting down, if you love coffee, sit down with a cup of coffee mindfully and just shut the
Hmm.
rest of the world out and just focus on, just be mindful. Do one joyful thing for yourself every single day, because we're not supposed to, Hashem wants us to enjoy it, right? It's not supposed to be an awful process. Yes, it's hard work. Hard
Hmm.
work doesn't have to be awful. So what can you do to give yourself that joy? And also, obviously, like things like that, which are so easy to say and so hard to put into practice, is like make sure you're sleeping enough. Make sure you're eating nutritious food, like all those things. Look after yourself because you're important. And then we can kind of add those extra things on.
You also talk in your book about creating balance in our lives. And that really spoke to me because the words that you use were there are three relationships that we need to solidify in our lives to have our balance. Number one, the relationship with ourselves. Number two, our relationship with other people. And number three, our relationship with God. Tell us more about these relationships and why is the first one the relationship with ourselves?
We see this so many things, right? Like that the world is kind of set on these three sort of relationships. Why
Hmm.
do we need a good relationship for ourselves? Because it starts with us. Just imagine, like you have a good night's sleep, you wake up, you're feeling good, and something happens. Your Uber driver's late, or your car doesn't start, or your coffee spills. How do we handle it? We handle it pretty good, right? Contrast that to you wake up a little bit late and you have an important deadline, and you have a back-to-back day and you're stressed, and then the coffee spills. Like it's like it's too much.
Lots of
So
layers.
first, yeah, it's lots of layers, and we react totally differently. Why? Not because of the external thing, but because of ourselves, right? So that relationship with ourselves is so important, right? And that relationship with ourselves is how we view ourselves, how we talk to ourselves, how we treat ourselves, right? How we think about ourselves. All
Right.
these different things really impact our relationship with ourselves. And you have to have that as a foundation before you can sort of, and it impacts the relationships that we have with others. Again, right? When you're in a good headspace and someone does something that's questionable, we're more likely to be able to give them the benefit of the doubt, right? If we're feeling down about on ourselves or hard on ourselves, and someone comes up to us and tells us something that they're upset with us about, we're more likely to be defensive, right? Because we don't have that sense of self that says, you know what, like I'm human, I do lots of the things, and I also mess up, right? And it's okay to mess up. I'll just apologize. I'll try and understand what happened from the other person's point of view. And if there was a miscommunication, let's try and clear it up. If there
Mhm.
was something that I did, I can acknowledge it. If the other person's just totally off, then I can understand that. But it starts with that base of knowing, of having that sense of self, that self-compassion, the self-kindness, the viewing ourselves really the way Torah views us, which is when we say in the morning, we say, the kindness, Shama, but God, the soul that you gave me, to her, he is pure, right? Every single morning, doesn't matter what you did yesterday. We wake up and we say, essence, who am I really? I'm a pure soul,
Mm.
right? And then we can approach the other relationships from that viewpoint, which gives us the resilience really, and to be able to navigate those relationships. And it's the same with our relationship with God, right? When we have that relationship with God, when we know that there's a higher power in our life who created us for a purpose and who's going to do what what is necessary out of a place of love to help bring us to that purpose, it grounds us. The way we react to things can be different.
Yeah. The Desire to Be podcast is taking sponsors for upcoming episodes. If you have a business that you'd like to advertise, if you have a product that you'd like to advertise, this is the platform to do it on. It will reach all my audience members, giving you lots of great exposure. Or maybe you just want to sponsor an upcoming show and support the Desire to Be podcast. If you're interested in sponsorship or advertising, reach out to me on either LinkedIn or on Instagram. You'll find me under my name, Devorah Goldberg. Thank you again for listening. What is your perspective of a fundamental, strong relationship with Hashem?
It's really interesting because I've been discussing this a lot in my classes and on my podcast the past few weeks. I think a relationship with God has to be real, which means there's going to be ups and downs. There's going to be times where you kind of feel like, wow, it's amazing that I got the job that I wanted. I managed to close on the house that we wanted, the car, the whatever it is, the kids got into school, whatever it is that you're looking for, everything just falls into place. And there are now going to be times where things don't fall into place. And it feels like, oh my goodness, what's going on? Like, what do you want? And I think it's important to understand that we live in a world that is hidden, right? There are those things that we don't understand,
Right.
right? But we don't give up on the relationship, right? We can have those tough times and we can ask God and we can argue, we can talk to God and we stay in the relationship, even though we're being challenged and tested and it's hard. So I think that's really what's a real, in my opinion, anyway, could be wrong on this, but my opinion is a good, healthy relationship with God is not that, oh, everything's wonderful and everything's fine, because I don't think any of us are on that level where we can just accept that. And I think but rather than that, I'm going through things and sometimes it's great and I get it and I see God's love for me and sometimes I don't.
Mm-hmm.
But even if it's hard, I'm still going to stay in that relationship.
Tell us of a story of someone's life that was deeply impacted by your book, that they were able to apply it to something in their lives and really enhance the situation, make it better.
Okay, so that is a great question and I'll share two stories, okay? One is personal. So we moved at the end of last summer from the UK to Denver in the States. And moving is not fun and moving is not easy. And I remember someone coming over to my house and they were looking at my book. They have a copy of my book as well. And they were like, Gila, did you ever think that God made you write the book so that you would know how to navigate your own life? And and that really stuck with me because I had written the book and I had finished writing it a year beforehand, and it went through the whole publishing phase. It was kind of like off thing, but it really made me refocus and say, wow, yeah, it's really rough to move,
Mm-hmm.
and there are all these tools that can make it a little bit more manageable.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how it kind of impacted my own life. And then, there's someone else who we had him over for Shabbat, and he was telling me he's not a religious person, but he reads the book every single night before he goes to sleep. He reads a little chapter of the book every single night. And he says it just changes his mindset and the way that he approaches situations that come up in the day. Because when you can focus on the higher purpose, right? Of the fact that we're here for a higher purpose, it changes how we respond to situations.
I love that. On the Desire to Be podcast, I really hone in on people's desire for greatness. And as a leader, as an inspiration for others, you're clearly in this light to make an impact on others. What would you say is your biggest desire for your life and for those around you?
For me, it's about showing up for my kids the way they need me to show up for them. So I've been in outreach work and education for, I don't know, 18 years now, which is a long time. Parents for 19 years, which is also a long time. And the more I've done the work and the more we used to work a lot with high school students, the more I see that the biggest impact, if we want to change the world, the biggest impact we have is on, if your listeners are parents, the
Mhm.
biggest impact we have is on the way we raise the next generation, right? Because our parents have such a great impact on us, right? If someone's not a parent, there are tremendous ways that you can impact the world, right? It's very much in the people to people connections that we really impact the world.
Mhm.
And so for me, it's yes, it's great, when you reach out and you put something out there and it has a lot of reach. But really, I think the impact that we make on others is person to person. And for me in my personal life, I think the most important thing is the impact that I'm going to have on my immediate family, right? My husband, my kids, because that is really going to change the next generation.
Yeah. And that is your legacy. And I'm thinking as you're speaking, because you make me think, Gila, is that, when you ask someone what they do, they're like, okay, I'm a mom and I do this and this and this. And the mom aspect is just like ends up being something that I am. It's not like something as you're speaking, as you're saying, I'm actually having an effect. I'm actually doing something to make to have an effect on others, on my very own children, flesh and blood. Even if someone says, I'm just a stay-at-home mom, no, you're not just. You are affecting your own children. You're affecting the next generation. How are you doing it? How are you showing up? And as you said, that's your first spotlight that you think of.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's true. We don't value as a society, we don't value the work that parents or educators of children do enough. And that trickles down to those of us who are either parents or in education, how we often just feel like, yeah, I'm just, or like, I just hung out with my kids all day today. Like I didn't really get anything done. Like,
Mm,
hello, you're raising human beings. It doesn't get much greater than.
you are a mom, exactly. This is going to be the last podcast before Pesach. What bracha, blessing, would you like to give my listeners as we enter into this zone?
Thank you. So really the bracha I'd like to give everyone that's listening is that Pesach, you should experience the joy that Hashem wants you to feel over Pesach, the freedom of being able to be in tune with your higher self. Because really that's what freedom is. Freedom is we always have that conflict of between the things that I want to do right now and the things that I want to do long term. And if we could, we would quiet that voice of what I want to do right now because the things that we want to do long term are more important to us. So may you experience the joy, the freedom that Pesach's about to be, and may you navigate the stress as best as possible and realize that the effort that you're putting in is beautiful, right? Like
Mm.
remember to pat yourself on the back for it because it's such an incredible thing to make Pesach, right? If you think about it, if you put it down on paper, and if it's gonna scare you, don't do it. But all these things, it's such an impactful thing, and you're doing it. So yes, it's stressful, and give yourself the permission to take rest, to take breaks, to do the fun things, and also the permission to make mistakes and just acknowledge the mistakes, move on because there are going to be stressful moments, and there are going to be things where you probably don't handle as best as you want, but like, it's okay. We're all allowed to make mistakes. We learn from our mistakes. And the truth is, if you're a parent and your kids can see you dealing with mistakes and learning from mistakes, and how we handle our mistakes, it's such a powerful teachable moment for them. So that's really my bracha, my blessing for everyone is just experience the joy, experience the freedom of connecting with your higher self, and allow yourself to just feel good about what you've done and be okay with the mistakes you've done. Fix the mistakes, right? Obviously, we have to fix them, but it's good to make mistakes.
I love that. And I'm going to add to your bracha, Gila, and whatever you guys are doing in this moment, make sure you have beautiful music on in the background. And take Gila's words and plant it in your heart. Go get her book. It's a great read for any of those moments that you're taking for yourself during this busy time, and a great way to enter into the zone of learning Perkei Avot. And wishing you all a happy and healthy Pesach. Thank you, Gila. Ah, what a great episode. Thank you for being here. I truly, truly appreciate you. I'd love for you to tap 5 stars and let me know what resonated. Be sure to connect with me on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn under my name, Devorah Goldberg. That's where I give you more content. That's where we're able to engage even further. Until next episode, stay safe and be well.